as Ron Harris graciously joined me in the studios of KBOO in Portland, Oregon, I couldn't help but be absolutely delighted by how quickly his particular sense of joy enveloped our conversation.
I have a cat. I named her Nippy Ann Turner. She's named after Whitney Houston and Tina Turner.
I love it.
I love music.
Each moment gained this uniqueness as his dangling earring danced every time he spoke.
I like soulful music. Favorite artists, Aretha Franklin, R.E.S.P.E.C.T., find out what it means to me.
It became increasingly clear, though, that the overshadowing of his joy by a pervasive lack of respect has been a central reality for Ron, especially as a Black nurse here in Oregon. They make up only 1.4% of the entire registered nurse population in the state. The roots of Ron's newfound awareness, they took hold during his university days back in Michigan.
I honestly didn't know I was a quote-unquote minority until college.
Say more about that.
That was the most white area I have ever been in. Even understanding the concept of what a microaggression was, I still didn't understand it. I was just like, why do I feel a certain kind of way about what this person just said to me?
Questions like these are what stick with Ron, even to this day. Welcome to Black Care Matters, the show where we honor the unique experiences of Black nurses working in the Pacific Northwest. I'm your host, Rashida Quinn. In recognizing that Black lives matter, it's crucial that the care for these nurses also matters. Cultural white supremacy has had a detrimental impact on the American healthcare system. Each nurse's story reveals rich insight towards the possibilities of a better future. Today, Ron walks us through why he was inspired to make his way into healthcare as a young Black man, how he's been forced to confront this system built off racism throughout his career, and the especially potent flavor of that system here in Oregon. It's a conversation full of laughter and conviction that you don't want to miss. This is where Black Care matters. You know, a lot of people around the country think of Black people in Oregon as an anomaly, and yet here we are, and there are more and more of us. And I'm just curious about what about Oregon you love?
Initially, I came to Oregon because I hate winters. I'm from the Midwest. The coldest that I experienced was minus 45 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's unholy.
I like that for Oregon, you're surrounded by nature, even though I'm not really that outdoorsy.
Not into camping?
Yeah, no. No, I have a metal rod in my leg. So like once that temperature drops, my brother's going to be in pain. Even hikes, when you go too far incline in my bum ankle, yeah, I'll be praying to Jesus. And the healthcare out here, I feel like is pretty good. I like how they incorporate a lot of like chiropractic, acupuncture, massage.
That's a great point. Holistic care is not accessible in a lot of places, and it's not even thought of as important.
There's a Black-owned acupuncture clinic in the Pearl. Definitely a lot of different things around the area.
But you grew up in Detroit, and you're going to high school, and you have this affirming experience in an anatomy class with an exceptional instructor.
So I went to my high school because they had a medical academy that focused a lot on the sciences. My favorite class and teacher in high school was anatomy with Dr. K. He was really creative and he brought the content to life a lot. We dissected frogs there as well, which was cool. And he was just like, I think you would be a really good nurse. You love learning and it will benefit you. And you don't see a lot of representation.
Wow. And he was a white professor telling you that you needed to be the representation in your field.
And most of my friends from high school are all in medicine now.
Really?
Yes. I think I was the only one that went the nursing route.
Did that class open up the door to the 2-week program at the University of Michigan?
Yeah. Intro to nursing school. It was at the University of Michigan. And that's where we learned what classes will you be taking as a nursing student? How's it like to be on a college campus? Because I was a first generation college student.
And what was your reaction to seeing the University of Michigan, like being in a college space? What did you feel in the college environment?
That was really my first experience with being on a campus for myself. After going there, I really wanted to go to the University of Michigan for nursing school, but I was talking about my ACT score with one of the people that was over the program, and she was saying, like, in order for you to even get accepted here at the University of Michigan, your ACT has to be blah, blah, blah. And I just was not making it on that front, but GPA-wise, I was good. That was kind of like my first exposure to, like, kind of having doubt in myself. But honestly, it lit the fire for me to just keep on going.
I love that, the comment made by somebody at a college program, oh, it's going to be hard for you based on your test scores to get here, compared to the encouragement you had in high school with Dr. K. It's like, depending on the person, those things can hold a lot of weight.
Yeah. And from high school to the 2-week program, and then how I actually got into nursing school. I got accepted to Michigan State University. It was the College of Nursing Achieving Culturally Competent Education and Student Success. This program accepted applicants from disadvantaged backgrounds, low income, and first generation college student, and really helped how hard it is to be a diverse college student, let alone a diverse nursing student.
Did racism play a part in that dynamic?
I honestly didn't know I was a quote unquote minority until college.
Say more about that.
When I went to college, that was the most white area I have ever been in. Even understanding the concept of what a microaggression was, I still didn't understand it. Why do I feel a certain kind of way about what this person just said to me? Or why are they like on a campus? We have a suspect that's a Black, thin-built, 6-foot Black man that did whatever. Well, that just described most of Black male students. So it's just so generalized. And it was just like, I don't feel comfortable leaving my dorm tonight. That's the experience of being in a PWI, predominantly white institution.
And how did it feel for you? Like going through these experiences, what kind of feelings and emotions came up for you as you were navigating this?
Initially, it was like, I don't know how to handle like this anger that I am like internally experiencing, but not fully comprehending my emotions. I feel like a lot of situations you kind of just have to suffer in silence because the dex is already not in your favor. So you have to find a way to navigate it. And even in nursing school, it was challenging. I was the only Black male out of 75 students, and it was only 5 Black students, and they said that was the most diversity that they saw.
Ever. I mean, it really makes me think about how privilege and the ways that white privilege exists and how they come with this sort of obliviousness to the fact that you are not challenged in the same way to get access to the things that you take for granted.
I just remember it was just like one instructor was just so hard on me. And I remember it was one time she made me so nervous and I was trying to draw up some medication and my hand just kept on shaking. And I was just like, just get it together in your head and just do what you got to do. Looking back at it, you are not treating us the same as some of our other predominantly white peers or passing peers.
It just makes me feel kind of sad. I mean, it's really an attack, right? It's a slow and deliberate attack that makes it difficult for Black men to rise to the occasion of their own intelligence. You had every right to be in that space as anyone else. And yet here you are, instead of being supported by some of the instructors, basically they're separating you from the crowd and making you feel like you have to work harder to get the same benefits of being in the program. So I'm sorry that that was an experience that you had to navigate. And it's that balance between Black people having resilience sort of baked into our reality and also feeling like we don't want to always have to play that part of our capability. Like, yes, I can be resilient. Yes, I can survive this, but damn it. So you finish your undergrad at MSU, and then what next?
I took a position in Minnesota for a year and a half. That was an experience when I found out how nurses can get attacked. When I saw my first patient lunge at me, I was like, where the heck am I working? At that time, it was like 4 beds for like the violent patients, and they wasn't broadcasting that on the application because that would have definitely prevented me from taking that job. I learned the foundations of nursing within that, like the critical thinking aspect. I learned how to set boundaries with patients.
That's so intense. I feel like that is a part of nursing that maybe folks don't know about, and the ways that when you're providing for the entire population and you have folks with different disabilities or, different neurological abilities, it can be a very dangerous experience for nurses.
It can be dangerous. Or like being told they never used to let coloreds do this job.
Wow.
Or being called a Negro and being told by one of my peers, like, well, that's just their generation. This is not okay.
Wow. I mean, you're dealing with a reality that's so different from your peers, and you're not having the support to navigate it. You're just internalizing and like having to metabolize these experiences on your own. And that's really difficult.
And I remember the first time I was called an N-word by a patient. I was like consoling them while they had a lumbar puncture. I was so taken back. And I remember I told one of the charge nurses who they end up telling my manager, and she was saying like, you can't change the behavior of a racist.
I mean, I feel like that exposes the vulnerability that Black care providers enter into without the support they need. That word has such a piercing history, no matter the context that it shows up in. And when it shows up, when you're literally helping somebody in their most vulnerable moment, the history of Black people being expected to help when they are being degraded, and to look past that and still be the number one supporters for white folks. I mean, this is a huge historical context. And so for it to be revisiting you in your profession, and the people around you and the supervisors are missing the whole crux of the situation, I mean, that's disheartening. That's really difficult.
I still focus on the quality of my cares, but like that compassionate aspect, I feel so disrespected that I have to cut off a certain level of emotion that I have towards you to protect myself.
I mean, it's really the healthcare industry's responsibility to create a way to support Black nurses, Black healthcare providers through the reality of a white supremacist society where racism is still commonplace. You can't ignore that it's happening. That means you need protocols on how to support people as they experience it.
I feel like in a place like Portland, Oregon, patients just like, you're the first Black person I've seen in my care ever, which is powerful, but also sad at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And what would you describe as your role and your experience as a nurse once you got here to Oregon?
In terms of racism, it's just different. They won't attack you directly, but they will get into your head and make you question your sanity, especially when you're needing support, being in these intimate situations with patients, and then having to also deal with some of the challenges with management, your own coworkers, doctors over you. It is a unique experience.
Can you describe a couple of these experiences for us?
When I was working primary care and they were saying they didn't want to help this Black patient out and emphasize they was Black to me, they was just like, well, I'm just trying to do my part for health equity. And I was so offended. And at the time, I was just like, anytime you ask for my help, I try to help you out as much as possible. But you literally are insulting me, implying that I don't even want to help out this person, especially because they're Black. I was just like, just leave it be. I'm not about to get into this. But I'm cutting off communication with you. And that's my only safeguard in a situation, is just like, just stay quiet and just focus on the quality of your job as best as you can.
Right. So this is what you mean by this sort of insidious, deeper type of racism, where things that are happening to you that aren't happening to your white colleagues, that you're trying to get help for, and nobody's really willing to acknowledge that it's even happening, that really empowers the person who's behaving that way to continue doing it because they know no one's going to step in. Mm-hmm. I feel like that description is so relevant when it comes to Oregon, because it is this subtle mind game where it's happening to you in such a plain way. Like, nobody's going to call it out because it's just too uncomfortable, but nobody's going to support you who's dealing with the actual discomfort of experiencing racism.
It has been interesting, to say the least.
So you've talked about one of those experiences where you were doing your best to provide the care for a white man who needed your support through his procedures and going to the bathroom. And as you're showing up for him, you're also experiencing racism. Can you kind of walk us through what that experience was?
Yeah, so it was this one situation. I was taking care of a middle-aged white man, and I get report on them. They need one or two people in order to ambulate or to get from point A to point B. So from there, he was just like, I need help wiping myself. I'm like, sure, help them. Boop, boop, boop. Then the next night, he put his call light on, and I had to help another patient. So I asked my charge nurse to help. She goes into the room. He says, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Okay. So let me get your non-skid socks, your walker, and a gait belt. And then he said, I'm not using any of those. Well, I can't safely get you up without using this equipment. And then he said, well, I'm just going to get up like I've been doing this whole time anyway. So then she comes back and tells me, I was just like, internally processing the situation. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, you literally had me wipe your its. I needed a third party to explain the situation. I'm not sure how to navigate this right now. So we had this resource, basically like a mental health rapid response team. I touched base with that nurse, and I just remember he was just like, is this a middle-aged white male? I was like, yeah. He might be trying to, but I already knew what he meant. He didn't even need to say the rest. My vision might have went blurred, but I was just like, I can't go into this room right now feeling how I'm feeling, because I'm not trying to put my license and job at risk.
So basically, the nurse was describing the fact that this patient was forcing you to help them after they defecated.
Because I was Black and trying to enforce his superiority over me.
There are no words.
Yeah. And I was just like, are you kidding me?
I mean, here you are taking care of someone once again in their weakest moment and being manipulated because of the color of your skin. It's so degrading. It's almost hard to process. I can't imagine being forced to deal with that kind of emotional and, I mean, physical disrespect, because you're actually taking care of this white body and being abused at the same time. I mean, God, that's just not okay.
It happens so much and repeatedly that it's just like, I can see why there's not too many nurses left. And then George Floyd happened, and then was just like, okay, I'm the only Black nurse right now. So I have to mentally prepare myself. I remember it was this one older lady. She was just like, I didn't know it was that bad for Blacks. You're in your 70s. How do you not know it was this bad? And then realized, I'm like, was this conversation inappropriate? I'm so sorry for bringing it up. I'm like, no. It was like, get out. No. No. And still having to like
placate them.
Yeah. And it was just like, it was exhausting. And like, there was patients that was refusing me for their cares. And I also got COVID in November 2020. And I took care of patients. And I remember 5 of them refused to wear a mask. And then I go into my shift. I'm like, something doesn't feel right. And I took my temperature. It was like 99.9. I'm like, crap. I was just like, and it was so new at that time during COVID.
We didn't understand it.
We didn't understand it. We didn't really understand how it was transmitted. And all I understood, it was just like, I'm at higher risk. So I isolated, and it was isolating because I just didn't have anyone for support. And then I had a mental breakdown because I took care of the same patient that was still refusing to wear their mask after I got COVID. And I'm like, you're literally putting us at risk. You're around other cancer patients. This is not okay. And then I just had a mental breakdown. I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't want to have to sacrifice my own life for people that's not deserving of it. Not just for having to deal with my Black experiences, but also being a nurse during this time. I just kept on crying. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I cannot go back to this job anymore. I'm constantly being attacked in one way or another. Being a Black nurse, you have to be able to see the perspectives of everybody that you come in contact with. The managers, your coworkers, your patients, and try to do what's right by everyone. But you sacrifice a little bit of yourself. And it's just like when I'm looking in the mirror and I don't see myself. I don't see the person that I thought I would be as a nurse. I feel like the last 3 years was just a huge dark time frame.
You made it through.
I worked hard gaining the knowledge that I needed in order to think in different ways about how we need protection. And it's certain things like mistrust, a lot of misdiagnosis with Black people. It's a lot of, seeing their loved ones die at the expense of the healthcare system. Tuskegee experiment, HeLa cells, that whole history that's trying to be erased right now in our country is a part of why there's a mistrust with Black people in the healthcare system.
Amen.
I hope institutions and managers take a step back, look at this from me being a human about my experience. I am not just Black. I am human. I am the same as you, and you are the same as me. But also, I'm not being treated equally.
Right. I mean, I think about the representation that you are as a Black male nurse and how when you do encounter Black patients, how having that cultural connection does make a difference.
I remember there was this one time, it was a Black patient, me being a Black nurse, and then it was a Black doctor. That moment was so powerful and beautiful because we don't get to experience that much. When you have a Black patient and you see the Black family, you can breathe. You can let down those guards. And in those interactions, you can be yourselves.
It just goes to show that representation matters. People do have a different experience when they get to have healthcare providers who look like them, who have the same culture as them. That diversity in healthcare is a part of our determinants of health, and not addressing it is skipping over an entire population that needs this support.
If you're treating your Black coworkers a certain way and then you have Black patients on your panel, are you really taking care of them?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really seeing them?
I think that's good advice that people need to be aware of. The ways in which their unconscious bias are a burden for other people, a distraction. That work that they're not doing on themselves is dangerous for other people.
I was watching Chevalier, which is like the Black Mozart. And it was this one quote: the greatest evil is not what they have done to our bodies, but what they have done to our mind.
Yes, my dad loved that quote. We watched that movie together as well, and it is absolutely accurate.
Especially being Black workers in isolated positions, Black nurses in isolated positions, it can't be just us giving the effort, because then it's going to be nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
We all need to meet each other halfway.
Right. And so now when you look in the mirror,
I see me. I see how far I came. I saw my luscious Black skin.
yes.
Hashtag Melanin King. And I see the knowledge that I have gained, the knowledge that I can still gain. I like the critical thinking piece.
Do you have any advice for a younger self? If you could talk to Ron, who is just entering the field, that you would share now, having learned what you've learned?
When I know someone is a Black nurse going into the field or a nurse of color, I always encourage journaling, because you never know how your story can impact someone else's, but also it helps you get it out in a healthy way. It helps you process. It helps you know how far you have grown, and whatever new journey you take on, make sure it's better.
You've learned how to keep yourself safe. You've been able to find joy in your position now and utilize your skills in a way that keeps your knowledge growing. I mean, all in all, there's so much success wrapped in your story, and I'm super grateful to be here and to be able to hold space for it and share it with others. And I thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. Our healthcare system has a real problem when excellent direct care nurses like Ron are pushed toward other specialties due to anti-Black racism in the workplace. I can't help but imagine how different things would be if white healthcare providers felt as alarmed and vigilant to eradicate white supremacy as Black providers do. One of the most backward aspects of racist culture is that the onus falls on the person of color to not only survive racism, but to strive to eradicate it. We hold a hope that the majority of white folks become radically responsible for searching their internal landscape for the residue of cultural white supremacy and compassionately walking themselves out of that oppressive way towards a truly inclusive American community. In healing oneself, we can support the healing of others. This kind of effort affirms that Black care matters. Black Care Matters is presented by the Alliance of Black Nurses Association of Oregon, sponsored by the Oregon Center for Nursing, and was recorded at KBOO Studios here in Portland, Oregon. This episode was produced by Ida Hardin, with production support and mix mastering by Ramoy Phillip. Our executive producer and host, myself, Rashida Quinn. The Black Care Matters podcast website was designed by Brendan Quinn, with portrait art created by Ryan Alexander Tanner. Special thanks to Danae Hall of the Alliance of Black Nurses Association of Oregon, Kelly Castanegro, and our team at KBOO, Jezaniah Hawthorne, Zoe Ezekiels, and Selena Flores. This podcast would not be possible without the generous grant from Oregon Center for Nursing. Thank you to our grant team, Rick Allgeier, Dawn Schoenthal, and Callie Giesler. And here's a special invite to all of you, our listeners. Please engage with what you hear and learn on Black Care Matters. Did listening to an episode remind you of a racialized experience you had in healthcare? Did it strengthen your commitment to anti-racism in your own workplace or community? Did it bring up questions about how you can better speak out against white supremacy culture? Please reach out with your questions and comments at blackcarematters.org/contact. We would love to feature our listeners' feedback on a special episode of Black Care Matters. Your voice matters. Listen to Black Care Matters wherever you get your podcasts, And while you're there, why don't you leave us a review? Your words really do help us reach a wider audience. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you. We'll have a new conversation for you next month. Until then, remember, Black hair does matter. It's a matter of how we make those words count.